Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and welcome to the Astral Library. Now I'm in front of my main bookshelf here because I wanted to create another recommendation video. But this time we are going to be focusing on paranormal romance series. So today I have for you 6 books that are all part of a series that are either complete or still ongoing that are paranormal romance focused. But before I dive in, I just want to talk a little bit about the paranormal romance genre because it is a genre that I turn back to over and over again, especially when I'm in a reading slump. Like anytime when I feel like I don't want to read a book, but I know if I don't read, it's going to be bad for my mental health or I'm just going to feel like shitty all around. Paranormal romance is where I turn to because it is just so much fun. It's usually pretty fast paced. And if you get the right author and the right series, it really draws you in from the first couple of chapters, which is what you really need in a reading slump. So I always highly recommend paranormal romance, and especially these 6 books I have for you are some of my favorite paranormal romance series that I turn back to over and over again every time I'm in a reading slump. Now, what do I categorize as paranormal romance? Because this is quite a wide genre. It includes a lot of different things and a lot of people have different definitions for it. So for me, there are 3 rules that I use to kind of categorize paranormal romance. First, that it has to have some paranormal or supernatural element to it, whether that be a species like werewolves or vampires, whether it be just magic. It's got to have some sort of supernatural element. Duh. It's called a paranormal romance for a reason. The second rule I have is that it must take place in our world for the majority of the series and or book. So this would discount portal romances where we get like sucked into another world, just because those types of paranormal romances tend to err more on fantasy side for me, which I love fantasy. Like I'm a fantasy girly. But when I'm looking for a really easy read, I like it to be set in our world just so I don't have to think too hard about the world building in itself. I can just accept the rules that it's like day-to-day life. I know how things work. I can just move on with my world and focus on the relationships or focus on the crime or mystery that's going on in the series. So it has to take place in our world for the majority of the book. I will make an exception if it's like our world, but like slightly different, as you'll see in one of the books I recommend in this list. But for the majority part, I want it to be our world, our rules. The third and final rule is that it must have romance as an integral part to either the plot or to the story in itself. So I don't necessarily need the romance to be the main focus. And in fact, I actually prefer it not to be the main focus just because I need a little more sustenance with my paranormal romance series. Like I don't want just like smut. I want to see our characters develop, but also to have the world be interesting and the story itself be interesting, which is what I find lacking in a lot of just like straight romance books at times. I just need a little bit of extra. So all of these books I'm going to recommend have really good plot lines where the romance, while prevalent and heavily developed, is not going to be the main focus of the books, which may or may not turn you off. But for me, it's the perfect thing I could ask for. Again, I really like a good plotty book with a really good slow burn romance. I like to see my characters get closer and to develop and to really make like the smut and any sort of spice to feel like I've earned it. With that in mind, let's go ahead and jump straight into these recommendations. So the very first recommendation I have for you is Moon Called by Patricia Briggs. So this is a part of a 14-book ongoing series that has been going since I believe like 2006. So Patricia Briggs has been creating this paranormal romance series for a very long time, and I have been an avid fan ever since I first stumbled upon Moon Called. So in the series, we are following Mercy Thomson, our main protagonist, and a were-coyote. Now, every book is kind of its own plot, so it's almost episodic in that sense, where you could read just this first book and be done if you wanted to, or you could read 2 books and be done. One of those series where you don't feel like you have to pick up the next book right away because it doesn't necessarily have an overarching plot, at least for the first couple of books. In this book in particular, we are following Mercy as she is kind of just trying to live her own life alone and not be bothered by the supernatural community as a whole, just because she's always felt like an outsider, especially among werewolves with whom she grew up with. And so as she's trying to ignore the existence of the supernatural community and just kind of hone in on her life, she becomes embroiled in a plot where her neighbor, the head honcho of the werewolf pack of the area, is attacked, and it's up to her to get him to safety and figure out who is trying to kill him and his family. So she becomes embroiled in this plot and she's trying to figure it all out while also trying to keep her distance and not get pulled into into this community that has essentially ostracized her for most of her life. I really, really love this first book because not only is the plot really interesting and it kind of pulls you in soon, but Mercy Thompson as our protagonist is so fucking funny. Like, she's just this like typical badass female who is witty and like hits back as hard as she gets, and she's just so fun to read. And I really love her interactions with her love interest, who I'm not going to tell you who it is, you know, because spoilers, but her love interest and her are really good together. I love their chemistry that they have, and I love how well developed their relationship becomes, because this is one of the series where they don't necessarily get together in the first book, but there's still a lot of the romantic tension to kind of keep you going and to pull you in. The fact that the series is still ongoing and I still find myself really attached to it and really recommending it says a lot, because again, it's been going since 2006, and I just really love all the characters that Patricia Briggs comes up with. I love that Mercy Thompson is native, so we get some native representation for a main character. And other than that, we get every supernatural creature you could possibly think of. Fairies, we got that. Vampires, got that in spades. Werewolves, of course. Were-Coyote, she's on the front cover. It's so great if you want to just dive into a rich world, but is also not a very complicated one, because it is still based in our world. All right, so for the very next pick, I have Midnight's Daughter by Karen Chan. Now, this is a 6-book ongoing series by Karen Chan that's actually a spin-off of one of her other series that I can't actually remember the name of this moment. This is definitely my preferred series of hers to read rather than the original series it came from. So in this book, we are following Dorina, who is a dampfire, or a half-human, half-vampire. And she kind of works as a bounty hunter, or someone who goes after rogue supernatural creatures that are causing havoc in our world. Now, Dorina as a dampfire is a bit of an unstable creature. Because of her half-human, half-vampire mix, it tends to make her race go ballistic and often die young, because they go into these blind rages where they either kill themselves or must be put down. And Dorina, as one of the few dampfires still around, is struggling with that constantly. But one day, as she's on a case, she actually gets wind that her grandfather, Dracula, has broken free from his prison. She is being enlisted by her father, one of the head vampires of the clan, to go and stop him, much to her dismay. I really, really like this series, as kind of with all of them on this list, but I remember I first read this book and I was so mad because I had picked this up at just like a dollar section, and I thought that this was the only book in the series, that I read it and it finished it, and I was so sad that there was no more. Well, turns out I was wrong. There's a whole host of books, and this is a series that I've actually read the majority of. I'm missing 1 or 2 books that have been published, but overall, I really, really love this series. This is one of the paranormal romance series where the plot is very, very heavy and very interesting, that draws you in more than the romance at times, but I still found the romance between her and Louis Caesar to be really compelling and just, again, draw you in and develop over the series of books, because this is a romance where we do see them get together in this book, but we see their relationship develop very naturally and very holistically throughout the rest of the series. We see them struggle, we see them come together, and we see them get closer and closer as the events of the story continue. So this is definitely a series that has an overarching plot, but also has a like episodic within a single book. So every case we go through adds on to our larger plot. Okay, my dog has decided to come lay down, so if you can hear her breathing, I apologize. It is hot out and she won't go drink water. All right, the next book I have up for us is Night Child by Jess Battis, and this is part of the OSI series. That is a 5-book completed paranormal romance series. If you are a fan of CSI, this is the book for you, because this is essentially supernatural CSI where our main character Tess is our CSI investigator, and she goes on to these supernatural cases and is trying to figure out what kind of creatures behind this and how can she, you know, save the day essentially. I tore through this novel. This is another one of those series that I had bought the first book, didn't know it was a part of a series, and was like devastated that there wasn't more, especially because the romance that we had got hinted at in this first book wasn't fully developed, and I was craving more. And then like 2 years later, I found out it had more than one book, and so I bought them all, and then I tore through them all, because that's how good this series is. Now, in this book in particular, we are following Tess as she is investigating one of these crimes, and as she's digging deeper and deeper into this case, she is finding clues that actually hints that the perpetrator behind the case is actually someone tied to her own past, particularly someone who tormented her as a child and was responsible for the murder of her family. So not only is Tess having to deal with her own trauma behind these events, but also work to save the teenage girl that she found in our very first case. And as she digs deeper and deeper, she finds a whole conspiracy that goes a lot further than she thought, and it goes into the power structures of her society. It is one that has more of an overarching plot than an episodic plot, even though we do get like cases in each book. I would say it's definitely more of an overarching series, and it is fully complete. Again, there's 5 books in the series. I will say the last book was not my favorite of the series. Not that it was necessarily bad, but that it kind of felt like it cut itself off at some points, but still, I highly recommend this series. It was a lot of fun. The romance was really great in it, and our main character, Tess, is just, again, another really strong female lead, while also being more vulnerable than some of the other people in this kind of list. So the next book I have is Written and Read by Anne Bishop. This is part of Anne Bishop's Other series, which is a 5-book completed series with ongoing spin-off books that she is still currently published. In fact, I think she actually published one of the books in these spin-offs last year, so they're still very new, so very current. If you find yourself falling in love with this world and wanting to read more beyond the 5 books, there's that for you. So this is one of the books that doesn't take place in our world, but takes place in a world like ours. Particularly, we think of our world, but instead of having a supernatural society that is like hidden, the supernatural creatures are very much known and present throughout the world. And in fact, they are the ones that are on top of the food chain rather than the humans. And the world's actually designated to areas that are controlled by the others, or supernatural creatures, and that controlled by humans. And the two do not really interact super well. And in fact, the others often view humans as being lesser and have been known to terrorize them, just as humans have been known to discriminate against the supernatural others. In this particular series, the main series, we are following our main character, Meg, who has been captive her entire life by this organization as using her special powers as a blood prophet to kind of sell prophecies to the highest bidder. And one day Meg is able to escape, but knowing she will never be able to hide herself away in human society, she runs away to an other complex, or this kind of like self-contained society, city that is run and controlled by the others, where humans are not allowed. This complex that Meg runs to is a unique one because it does have some interaction with humans. It is essentially kind of like an experimental type of complex where they have like a storefront that humans are actually allowed to come into and to shop around and to interact with the others a little bit. So when Meg arrives, it is the perfect time because they are a little more open to accepting her. But Meg, who at times has a very naive and childlike view of the world because she's been captive her entire life, finds herself struggling to figure out how to belong in both as a human and in the other world that is completely different from the human world. This series is super interesting, not only with the character and the powers that are going on in this world, but just in these societal construction between the others versus the humans. It's so interesting to see how these two societies not only work separately, but how they are starting to converge on each other as the books continue. And more than that, how Meg, this character who is honestly part of neither world, acts as the bridge between the two of them, and she's pulling these two sides together in a really unique and interesting way that develops over the 5 books. Now, in terms of romance, the romance between Meg and her love interest is very compelling and very interesting. It's really sweet to see the two of them interact together, especially how her love interest becomes very protective of Meg as the people who held her captive come looking for her and are desperate to get her back. Now, the romance is slow burn, so we're not going to see them get together in this first book or even in the second book, but the time they do get together, it is super worth it in the end. I highly recommend this series, especially if you love a good slow burn romance and want a really interesting world to kind of lose yourself into. That again is not too complicated because it still very much mimics our own world. All right, the next series I have for you is People Notice the Rain by Cindy Paul. So this is part of the Hepdale trilogy, which is an indie series created by Cindy Paul and her imprint Ever After Prints. I've always been a fan of Cindy, as you've probably heard me talk on the channel over and over again. I'll leave a link to her store because everything Cindy writes is amazing. Not only just look at this amazing cover, I don't know if you can really see it on camera, but the raindrops in this light are actually embossed. Like, you can feel them on the cover. Cindy put so much effort not only into the design and looks of her books, but also into the content. So Ever After Prince and Cindy Paul's mission is to create more books with representation, especially with LGBTQIA plus main characters. People Notice the Rain, or the Hepdale series, is chock full of a whole bunch of different type of characters that widely range on the sexuality spectrum, and it's so good. Again, you've heard me like rave about how much I love Cindy. I've been following her since she was creating fan fiction, and I'm so happy and proud of her that she has created these wonderful series, and particularly People Notice the Rain, which we had lovingly called her self-indulgent gay werewolves book, and that is exactly what the series is. It is highly self-indulgent, but also super cute and super sweet. In this series, we are following different couples as they kind of become embroiled into this like overarching plot with werewolf hunters that are hunting down our characters. Now, this first book, we are following Silas, a high school boy who is at a kind of low point in his life where he has lost one of his parents and he's feeling overall pretty down about himself. He feels like no one notices him until one day while he's walking home in the rain, he notices a boy that is paying nothing but attention to him. And Silas, who has been used to being ignored for most of his life, finds himself the center of attention of this boy. And he's trying to figure out, why is this boy so into him and what could he possibly want, and why is he watching Silas, who feels like he is nothing. Oh my god, guys, the romance in this is so sweet. It's so sweet and it's funny, and I love every single character that we get, and I just fell in love with Silas and Theo and my absolute favorite boy, Jack. Every character in this series stands out so much. It does something that I thought was actually impossible to make me like. So every book in the series follows a different set of characters as like our main focus, which is something I really hate. I like my stories to be connected together. I like an overarching plot. I don't necessarily want to get invested into new characters over and over again for every book. But this series, oh my god, this series made me want to read the books in these other characters' perspectives because they were so interesting, and I just really found myself wanting to see what they thought and how they view the world and what is their interpretation on the actions going on. Because while there is an overarching plot, we still get to go inside of each character's heads and look at their own internal struggles and see them find their one true loves in these wide cast of characters. And every book drew me in. Even the last book, which was following a character I thought I wouldn't really care about, pulled me in so hard and made me attached to that character. Characters really interesting and really well developed. They all have art that go with them. So if you're a person that has a hard time visualizing characters, don't you worry. Cindy and her illustrator Renee has got your back, because not only do they design these gorgeous covers, but they have art attached to them. Actually, I'll insert you a clip right here of me showing some of the art of the characters from this series. They're beautiful, they're gilded, they're shiny. I love them, and I love this series, not only for its representation, but also just for the beauty that is Cindy's writing. If you want to support an indie author and you really want to see more representation in books, please, please, please check out Ever After Prints. They produce some amazing stuff that ranges from short story collections to full-length series to they're producing coloring pages. They just released a D&D NPC compendium. Please, please, please check them out. They're amazing. I'll leave a link in my description box. The last book I have for you guys should come as no surprise if you know me, and that is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. This book, we are following our main character, Ox, who isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, or so he thinks. And one day while he's walking home, he runs into a family who is moving in down the street. As he's walking home, one of the little boys runs up to him and starts blabbing how much he likes Ox and how he smells amazing and like epicness and pine cones. And the family watching this interaction is just blown away, because we find out that this little boy has actually not spoken in many, many months because of a traumatic event that happened. And so we're following as this relationship as Ox not only gets closer to this little boy, but also to his family. And it feels like he is accepted and part of a family for the first time in his life, because before it was just him and his mom. So this is a book where we're following Ox from about a teenager to his late 20s, I believe, maybe early 20s. And as he not only gets involved with this family, but suffers through tragedy both on his own and with that family. And I love this man. Everything he has written has made me cry. The book that started it all was Wolfsong. I read this before it was traditionally published, where it was still an indie self-release on Kindle. And oh my god, when I tell you, I was blown away with what TJ Klune had created in the series. Now, if you read House in Cerulean Sea or Lives of Puppets or Under the Whispering Door, those are his more like popular and well-known series, but this is the one that will always stick out to me. This is the book that I will always turn back to, because it was just so beautiful and heart-wrenching and made me cry over and over every time I've read it. In fact, every book in the series will make you bawl, because every book in the series has made me cry. In fact, it's made me cry so hard that I haven't even finished the series out of fear of my heart not being able to take the amount of crying that I will go to do. Oh, I love this series so much. And this is another book where we're following multiple characters and multiple relationships, but it makes you love every single character, especially because we're following, again, a variety of sexuality spectrums throughout the series. So we have gay, bisexual, asexual, we have an asexual representation, which I love. We need more asexual representation in romance series because not all asexuals are aromantic. And TJ Klune is just a master at creating these wonderful relationships that feel real but really touch your heart. It's a great series, and I'm so happy that they are being traditionally published now, and that I have my beautiful Waterstones editions. Like, look at these edges. Look at those fucking edges. They're so pretty. And the second book is also just equally as gorgeous, even though it doesn't have the sprayed edges, sadly. But highly recommend this series. It's so good. You cannot go wrong with TJ Klune. His writing is beautiful, his characters are interesting, and his plots are very compelling and draw you in. Alrighty, but that is it for me today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider leaving a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what paranormal romance series you've loved, whether they're part of a series or whether they're standalone. I could care less. I love this genre so much. I'm always looking for more, especially because in recent years, my paranormal collection has like dropped down just because I trade them in and out so fast. So I'm always looking for more because I'm kind of in a reading slump and I need some recommendations. I would love for you to hurt my wallet. Hurt it so much that it cries, but I get so many new books for my shelves. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. It helps the channel out and lets me know that you want to see more videos like this. I've been having so much fun making these videos, and I am so thankful for each and every one of you for not only creating this wonderful space for me to create in, but also your wonderful comments of what you guys are reading and recommendations of what you think I should check out. I've been so happy every time I get a little notification saying there's a comment, or even just seeing the likes on the videos. It means a lot to me, so thank you so much. But that is it for me. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy the rest of my day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of yours, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!